Hey, nature photographers, it's Lee Hoy, and I'm coming to you from my hotel room here in Gardner, Montana. It has been the most erratic weather I have ever seen here in Yellowstone in winter. Almost a 70-degree difference. In fact, I believe it was a 77-degree difference from about today until about a week ago when I was over here with my first group. It was about 50 and raining a little while ago, yet it snowed while we were in the park today. And today, overall, would have been a fascinating day. Bull moose with antlers still. We had hunting and jumping red fox, bison running and playing, bald eagle at eye level. I mean, it was really a great photography day with a lot of, elk, mule deer bucks. I mean, it was really a great day. But it was weak compared to a couple of days ago. And so that's what I'm going to talk to you about in this video. What do you do when nature gives you that moment? When something so spectacular happens that it's probably a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? How do you make sure that you capture the images that you want? Because if you're traveling to a place like Yellowstone in winter, whether you're with a workshop or whether you're traveling on your own, the fact of the matter is that there is planning involved, there is anticipation, there is hope. You look over images from other people, and all you can think about is getting that big moment. And the other day, when I go into the park from West Yellowstone on a snow coach, I always let my snow coach driver, I really want to be first snow coach into the park. And that, most time we are. Only about twice I haven't been, but we were third in line. And we were third in line because a bobcat had been seen the day prior. And normally, a bobcat would be a pretty big deal in Yellowstone. So the two snow coaches went in, then our coach went in, and as we had traveled quite a ways down the Madison, we turned at the junction to head down to the fire hole. And once we got to the area where the bobcat had been seen, the other two snow coaches really slowed down, and we weren't seeing anything. And I said, "Hey, why are we going around them?" So our snow coach goes around them. We don't go too terribly far down the road before we notice a black wolf in the road. Now, I've seen wolves before, and I've had wolves close. So in and of itself, for a new group or photographers that have never seen a wolf, and let's be honest, wolves are always great to photograph, that was what, unbeknownst to us, would become and would lead to one of the greatest days of photography I'd ever experienced. And as we laid down on the road and got shots, a second wolf came out, and then a third. And then I noticed a photographer from another group begin to sneak off down the side. And I really got up to watch because I was afraid he was going to bump these bump the wolves away. And I was going to say something if I thought he was getting too close. But as I came around the corner and looked down, I saw a bison in the river. And right then I knew that things were about to change. Hey, nature photographers, I'm Lee Hoy, OM System Ambassador, photography workshop instructor for Wildside Nature Tours and Precision Camera and Video, and contributing author for the Journal of Wildlife Photography. Here we go. My group, as I told them, we must go down the riverbank right now. For when I looked and I saw the bison in the river, it was facing the bank, and there were 3 different wolves initially that basically had it trapped in the river. And then we began to notice other wolves that would cross the Firehole River to get to the other side. And then we noticed that there were other wolves back up on a hill behind the 3 wolves that were keeping this bison in the river. And to make a long story short, we spent an entire day photographing this hunt, which was successful, and frankly it was extremely successful, and it was successful in every way possible. It will be one of the most talked about photographic events from Yellowstone in winter for a very long time. It was simply spectacular. And so my video today is, what do we do to make sure we capture the big moments, right? I don't know if you're a subscriber to the Journal of Wildlife Photography, But if you are, you notice that my first article as a contributing author came out in this winter edition. And the title was Making the Most of the Wildlife Photographic Experience. And that article is built on the premise, and it's the premise upon which I build my entire wildlife and nature photography premise, is based on a formula. And that formula is preparation plus skill times patience equals luck. Let me say that again for you. Preparation plus skill times patience equals luck. Now, I'm not going to cover that whole formula for you, because really you need to subscribe to the Journal of Wildlife Photography. And if you're going to, I'd appreciate it if you go to my webpage, lehoyphotography.com. On the lower left, I have an affiliate link. It helps me out. If you enjoy my content and you want to subscribe to the Journal, it's a fabulous periodical. I'm a lifetime member, and I was before I became a author for the Journal. It's very technical. They have a phenomenal online community, great photo contests with pretty good monetary prizes, once a month online trainings. It's a phenomenal resource. I highly recommend it. But let's get back to the gist of today's video. I mean, this moment was so powerful that it was emotionally moving for me, because not only did I know what I was going to get to experience, but even better, I knew what my workshop participants are going to get to experience, and that it would be once in a lifetime. Some of them thought you just came to Yellowstone and saw this. They had no idea this is once in a lifetime event. But all too often, photographers are met with luck, the end of the formula. But either they fail in preparation or skill or patience, and they don't walk away with the big images from the big moment. So what I hope to do today is to walk you through some of my tips, some of my philosophy. What are the things that you can do so that you capture images like this? I mean, as you take a look at these images, I hope you enjoy looking at them as much as I enjoyed being out in the field, capture them. And let's be honest, you can't enjoy them that much, right? It's probably impossible. But because my goal is to help you make the most of the wildlife photographic experience, I want you to have a phenomenal experience combined with incredible images. And I believe there are some things that we can do as wildlife photographers, nature photographers, to help capture the big moment. So one of the first things I noticed, we got out of the snow coach. We wanted to get prone on the roadway so that we had that great perspective for our images, because the first black wolf we saw was laying down on the road looking at us with those vibrant, yellow eyes. One of my clients was laying down right next to me, and I could tell she was very excited, and her breath was just pounding. And the first thing I said out loud was, calm your breath. Calm your breath, I want you to be excited, but I want you to also maintain a calmness. I want you to stay focused, and I want you to be intentional. You need to block out all the things that can serve as a distraction that will enhance your experience and help you capture better images. Sometimes I have to tell people to breathe because I hear them holding their breath. Now, sometimes in macro photography, you might want to hold your breath or breathe out your nose straight down so you don't disturb your subject. That's different, right? But we want to stay calm on the inside so that our mind becomes still, so that we don't miss the opportunity. So when that big moment presents itself, when the image of a lifetime is right there in front of you, calmness will prevail in terms of capturing great images. I'm not saying you shouldn't be excited about the opportunity, but you have to learn to practice stillness inside to help minimize camera shake, to help focus on settings and creativity, because in that moment, we don't want to just think, just get the animal on. No. Slow down. Composition, autofocus, exposure. Our mind needs to run through all of the things that we want to consider and contemplate. The second thing I might suggest is this is not a time to try new techniques. This is not a time to experiment. This is a time to go with what you know. In the South, say, dance with who brung you. So go with what works for you in that moment, okay? If you're trying some new fancy blur technique or whatever, maybe that's not the time when it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So go with what you know, do the best you can, and stay present in the moment. Third thing I would suggest, because this is what time and time again ruins images. And if you listen to enough of the yahoos on YouTube or some of my haters in the comments, haters, please post. You help the algorithm, and most of you just prove how goofy you are. I would suggest to you that way more images are ruined. Let me say that again because of my southern accent. More images are ruined by slower shutter speeds versus high ISO. Listen to me again. Countless more images are ruined by too slow a shutter speed versus a high ISO. DxO Pure Raw 3 handles high ISO beautifully. Not a problem if you expose to the right, if you start with a sharp image, and don't crop the crap out of the image. But way more images are ruined by too slow a shutter speed because you're afraid of a high ISO. That is simply stupid. I don't care. Most of my clients are older than me. I'm often the young buck and I'm 55, right? Stop thinking you can hand hold at 200th of a second at 800 millimeters when you're 73 years old, standing in a foot of snow, and you're all amped up you're all jacked up on Mountain Dew, because what's happening in front of you is once of a lifetime experience, okay? For us OM system shooters, you have live highlight alerts. Nailing exposure has never been easier. I mean, let's be honest, you can't do that on Nikon, you can't do that on Canon. That right there means I would never shoot with those systems. To spend $5,000 on a camera body and not have live highlight alerts, this bald guy ain't doing it. That's a waste to me. I know you can capture great images with Nikon. You can capture great images with Canon. Hear me out. I did not say that. But I don't want to have to keep track of all the rules I used to have of, do I need to add 2 1/3 stops? Take my camera meter out of my OM1. Don't need it. And just use your live highlight alerts. Okay? So all I've got to do, particularly on snow, slow my shutter speed down until I see a little red highlight alerts pop up on snow, dial it back 1/3 or 2/3 of a stop. I'm going to do a video thinking of clicks. 1 click is 1/3 of a stop on shutter speed or aperture or ISO, right? But we've got our ISO set. We've got our aperture set for the depth of field we want. So I'm adjusting shutter speed. Now, is my shutter speed still fast enough? If not, increase my ISO. Boom, go to a faster shutter speed. So live highlight alerts make exposure easier than ever. We want to nail that exposure for Micro Four Thirds for our OM system. We want to expose to the right. We'll let all the goofball Sony guys, in their 20s and 30s argue about ISO invariance and why you can underexpose. I don't give a crap. I'll teach you why you should ETTR. Expose to the right is critical for gathering data, okay? I'll talk about that in another video. Now, 5th tip, okay? I want you to learn to watch for telltale signs of behavior. So often, the animals in front of us will tip us as to what's about to happen, okay? So, for example, as soon as that bison would try to sit down or lie down once it got on shore, the wolves would not give it any rest. So if we saw it go lie down, we instantly wanted to get ready for the wolves to come over to try to tear at its hindquarters. Okay? You would see times where the wolves might be laying down, but those eyes would be very in tune with that bison, like this image. Okay? Take a look at this image. Notice the intensity. I mean, those eyes tell what's going on. And you could see the animals interacting with one another, both the wolves with the wolves with the bison. And the beauty of it was they often gave us a clue as to what was about to happen. You could see at times, one time the bison laid down, it was so tired, its head did like your toddler does in a child seat when they're exhausted, just falling over. And we knew that bison is getting exhausted, right? They were doing everything to deprive it of food, sleep, energy, all of those kind of things. So there are clues as to what's going on in big moments. Sometimes it might happen like that, and sometimes it may be protracted. That's why we want to stay in tune with what's happening as much as possible. The sixth thing is, and it's kind of related, anticipate the moment. That means our exposure settings should already be set before it happens. And particularly if you're shooting in snow in Yellowstone in winter, we can meter off the snow. That's no problem. Boom, highlight alerts, dial back, get rid of the blinkies, and we're ready to go. That means we're going to capture as much detail as possible in those wolves, right? And not blow out the snow. So if we anticipate our settings and we're watching telltale signs of behavior, that means we need to anticipate the moment. And I did that when I knew there was going to be a lot of action. I decided to shift to SH2 drive mode so that I was at 50 frames per second. And I know I hear this all the time. I just don't have to go through that many images. Okay, then don't be disappointed when you miss some moments. You know, today I had a fox jumping and diving, and it is incredible the number of poses I got using 50 frames per second versus what I would have got using 20 frames per second or even 10. So if you don't like going through a lot of images, hey, no problem. That's your prerogative. Nobody applauds you for capturing an image with brevity. This isn't film days. Nobody says, well, I captured that image in 30 images, right? Well, I captured that images in 10 images. Well, I captured that image as 3 images. Oh, that's a better image. Nobody's doing that. So don't brag on doing it in fewer images. Nobody cares, right? That's silly. So use the drive mode that's going to give you the most options in action. And for me, that's SH2. Or Pro Capture if it's an action you can't really anticipate. Okay, I did not use Pro Capture for the wolves attacking the bison. I generally knew what was about to happen. It's not like a bird taking off a perch or marine iguanas expelling salt out of their nostrils in the Galapagos Islands. Okay. Number 7 is horizontal isn't the only composition, that you can use. So often, the correct image was a vertical one. For example, at one point, the wolves drove the bison, just when it was near the end, they drove the bison back into the river, and the bison was coming right at me, and the wolves were on the shore excitedly. And I knew that a vertical composition, and the bison's head was up, and the eyes were huge. The emotion in that moment was very powerful. So I'll show you the image here in a second, okay? So with the head up, the eyes big, the bison looking right at me, and the wolves directly behind it, a vertical composition meant I was going to draw the viewer's eyes from the bison's eyes back to the wolves. You knew immediately where the fear in those eyes came from. And a horizontal composition would not have captured that as well. Okay. I have a client has the OM1, has a 150-400. She's here and she sees the benefit of the grip, the optional battery grip, because it helps balance the weight of an OM1 with the 150. It gives a little more back end weight. I feel like it's a little weighted front heavy without the grip. Okay. Plus, shooting vertical is easy. You got all the controls you need on the vertical grip. So if you don't get the vertical grip because of A, money, and B, I can understand sometimes money's a limitation, but let's be honest, if you've bought the 150-400, the battery grip's pretty cheap compared. So you want that balance, and shooting vertically's never been easier. So often during that day, a vertical composition was exactly what was needed. Okay? Now, I want to talk about 3 elements of capturing the best images in those big moments. Okay, take a look at a couple more images before I jump into these. Okay, here's what I want you to contemplate. Now, mind you, we spent approximately probably right around 10 hours, maybe 9. I think we probably arrived there around 7:30 to 7:40 a.m. and we departed exactly at 5 p.m. According to a park employee, the bison died probably around 5:30 p.m. and the wolves consumed a great deal of it overnight, and then we photographed them coming across the river, consuming some of the bison in the river, carrying pieces of meat back, and it was amazing. It was not like the first day, but it was still pretty cool. And in my images, there are several things in a big moment that you want to try to do if you have the time, okay? One was tell the story. I like to shoot tight, but sometimes the best shot is as wide as you can get. So on the 150 to 400, there were a couple of times where all 11 wolves are on the bank and the bison's in the water. And the story is this very large pack of wolves that have driven this bison back into the river and are simply waiting for it to expire. So by zooming out, and I had to walk backwards, like one of my other clients had to capture the whole story. Okay? So sometimes the story is big picture, and sometimes the story is very small. But in that case, I wanted to tell the story of what was going on at that moment. So when you have a big moment, how can you tell the story of what is unraveling or occurring? Stories are powerful, and great stories, like great music, emote. They move you somehow, okay? Or they help you, they transport the viewer into the moment. Great landscape images take the viewer to where you were in that moment. They invite the viewer into the image, okay? So think about, how can I tell the story? Another option in a big moment is capturing personalities. Every wolf in that pack had a different personality. The alpha female, the air of confidence about her was unbelievable. The younger ones, I think there were 8 black wolves, and there were, I think 3 grays. One of them was kind of white, the alpha. She was just really pale. She was absolutely drop dead gorgeous. It was the Wapiti Lake pack. And that wolf had a very different air about her than some of the younger black wolves. You know, we got scenes of the young black wolves running and playing and all excited, and Tails doing this. And she just operated differently. She would walk very close to that bison, curl up and lay down and relax with all the confidence of an experienced wolf. Whereas you and I would just be like, wow, we're way too close. We would not close our eyes. We would not relax. We would not have that air of confidence. And you could see that. So I took images of her in very relaxed poses and just with this air of confidence and dignity about her. That some of the younger wolves, they were all hyper and active and playing, and I captured images of that. So can you communicate the personality? Because while they are wolves, they are individuals. And sometimes we as nature photographers, we categorize things by species. But they don't know they're gray wolves. They relate to each other as individuals just as you and I relate to them. And certainly I have a very different personality than many of you. And you have a very different personality than many other people in your family. And there are character traits and things about you that make you very different from your siblings or from your cousins or your parents. And that's true for wildlife as well. And a great photographer in great moments wants to bring forth, they should try to elicit and demonstrate those personalities in your image. And that often requires closeness. That's one reason I love my home system gear, 150 to 400 with the built-in 1.25 teleconverter, and I'm at 1,000 millimeters equivalent. And with my flexibility, a great many of the photographers there with their giant ass lenses and carrying all that weight had to work off a tripod. So all of their images are going to be from the same angle or perspective. Whereas I could lay down, kneel, stand up. I had all the flexibility in the world to help capture personalities. Another thing that you can do in great moments is reveal the emotions. Now in nature, emotions are generally very raw. And frankly, some people don't like predator-prey interactions. And while I understand it, I also feel sorry for them. Because there is a beauty even in the most violent aspects of nature. You know, for many people, the death of the bison is tragic. But it is not tragic in that it provides for the life of the pack. Okay? So every aspect of nature has 2 dimensions. I really don't like it when I see nature photographers interfere with the snake trying to eat birds. Snakes might get 1 or 2 meals in their lifetime. In a year, you know? And you may be really causing tremendous heartache to that snake by saving a baby bird from it. All right? So nature's chock full of emotions, and great moments bring great emotions. I mean, the emotions I experienced over the day of tremendous excitement, joy, exhaustion, I mean, that's a part of it, mental, physical. I mean, not only am I photographing, but I've got, a group of people that I'm working with. And it was a privilege to be out there and share that with Dawn Wilson, one of the guides at Wildside Nature Tours, and with Kyle Moon, a new guide that we're working with and hoping to incorporate into Wildside. And then our clients, who were all just overwhelmed by this day. And so what I hope is that images will convey the emotions. And take a look. Here's one of some of the young wolves. The bison's not even dead, but you can sense the giddiness in the pack, because I guarantee you, from the time we arrived, every wolf there knew that they were going to eat. The question wasn't if, but when. Every wolf there was acting as with, I mean, they would walk off at a distance that you and I think, wow, are they giving up? And they clearly weren't. The matter was completely under control from a pack perspective. That bison had nowhere to go, and the bison knew it too. The only people that might have doubts would be some individuals maybe standing on the shore. So in great moments, we want to think about telling a story. All right, what's going on? Because this is, and what I love about the bison wolf hunt that we got to watch and photograph, this is a spectacle that has been carried out in North America for tens of thousands and probably longer years. But how many people have got to photograph it? I assure you, a lot more African animal hunts are captured photographically than bison wolf hunts in North America. This is a much rarer event than getting to photograph a lion hunt or a cheetah hunt, leopard hunt. Way harder to come across. So you don't want to be that person that when you go back and look at your images, they're all soft because you just thought you could shoot at 1,000 millimeters at 640th of a second. Can't do it, right? Because you're afraid of an ISO 6400, which is silly, or because you're too busy allowing distractions. You're chimping. Oh, for God's sake, stop chimping in the field when the action's happening. As Kenny Rogers sings, there'll be time enough for chimping when the shooting's done. God bless you, Kenny Rogers, right? Stop doing that. It's a horrible practice. I see so many people miss images because they're looking at the back of the camera. By God, you can look at the evening. Well, I want to check my exposure. Well, you know what? If you're shooting OM system and you got live highlight alerts, you really don't need to. You should be nailing it almost every time. Okay? Now, again, if you're shooting with a DSLR, you're shooting with, God forbid, a mirrorless camera without live highlight alerts, you need to take test shots and then check post-capture highlights in your histogram. You can look at your histogram, but histograms are so small in some viewfinders that if you have a tiny amount of white in your scene, it can be hard to see if you're blowing that out or not. So really, for me, live highlight alerts are number one. Yes, I'll do a video on that. So if you're lucky enough to be someplace, whether it be in your own backyard, a wildlife refuge, on a photography workshop in Yellowstone in winter, wherever it may be. I was blessed. I had 6 people that subscribed to this channel come up and introduce themselves to me that morning. So I'm so glad that other people that are a part of this community got to see, witness, and photograph that. That blew me away. And thank you for coming up. Y'all were awesome. It was so great to meet you. But what are you going to do to make sure that when the big moment comes, not only do you capture it technically correct, but that you capture it creatively correct, that you tell the story, that you capture the personalities, and that you reveal the emotions. And if you do that, you will have images that not only last forever, whether it's on your wall, whether it's in a slideshow on your computer, whether it's on your social media shared with friends and family, but it will live up here. It'll live up here. And every time you look at that image, you're going to realize what a tremendous opportunity you were given. My formula, preparation plus skill times patience equals luck. Last factor. I knew when I saw those wolves and that bison, I had 2 thoughts. This is going to be epic. And I pray that my clients understand how important it is to stay here and ride this out. All I could think of was, dear Lord, don't let them want to go in 2 hours. Because the group I had, the week before probably would have gone. and we wouldn't have stayed all day. This group was phenomenal. They stayed all day. They didn't have lunch. They didn't want to leave to go to the bathroom. It was incredible. And by doing that, they maximize their opportunities. So when the moment comes, are you going to be patient enough to stay there? Patient enough to constantly be evaluating your exposure if there's any change in the light? Patient enough to continue watching and looking for signs of upcoming behavior? Are you going to be patient enough to not look at your images in the field, but to be watching for action? Patient enough to realize when a big moment's occurring, all the things you need to do to still yourself, your mind, your body, your breathing, to think about what you already know and put it into practice. I hope you will. I hope you will. I hope someday you'll be able to go out with me in the field and maybe capture an epic day like this.